It's September 1st, 2025, a little after 2 in the afternoon. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I'm back aboard my Allied Princess 36 Catch Seaquestor. And this is going to be the first video in a series of videos about the systems on the boat. And today we're going to talk about one of the more important systems, and that is the propulsion system, or if you will, auxiliary propulsion system. In other words, the engine. So let's get going. Now, Seaquestor is a 1973 vintage Allied Princess 36 Catch. I don't know what engine these came with originally. If you look at what documentation is available, there are a number of different options. The most common one was about some sort of diesel around 27 horsepower, which isn't much for this size boat. The previous owners, before we bought the boat in 1996, installed this Westerbeek 46 diesel engine. That's a 46 horsepower, 4-cylinder diesel engine. And they also, at the same time, abandoned the original fuel tank, which was a 40-gallon black iron tank located in the bilge underneath the engine. And because it was in the bilge, it always had bilge water on top of it. And those tanks had a tendency over the years to rust out. And that had happened with the tank in Seaquestor. So they abandoned the tank. They didn't remove it. They just capped off the various fills and extraction tubes. And they put a 13-gallon plastic tank in the starboard lazarette just after the cockpit locker. And it's been there since 1987. So what do we have here? So this is the Westerbeek 46. It's a naturally aspirated diesel engine, and it has a preheat system for starting it in cold weather. And yeah, it has, I think, about 1,324 hours today. And so it has not been heavily used. And the engine itself is in pretty good shape. Matter of fact, we've not had any problems with any engine-specific components, with the exception of the fresh water pump here, which failed about 5 years ago, and I installed a new pump. And that was an original part that came with the engine, as opposed to, say, the saltwater pump here, which I rebuilt this year, which is an add-on put there when they marinized the engine. Okay, so I mentioned the fuel system, 13-gallon plastic tank in the aft lazarette. The fuel comes down to this Raycor 500 MA fuel filter and runs through that over to this lift pump here, electric lift pump. It has another small filter in it, and then goes to the primary fuel filter. Now what I do is I keep a 2-micron filter in the Raycor filter, and that allows me to only change the on-engine filters every 5 or 6 years because that Raycor keeps the fuel nice and clean going into the engine, and these on-engine filters don't need to be changed much. So those are the main components. I'm going to sit down a little and talk a little bit about some of the issues we've had with the engine over the years and the repairs that we've done. I should mention one other thing. The boat has a bronze raw water strainer there for cooling water to come into the seawater pump and go out through the heat exchanger into the exhaust. It has a wet exhaust. Well, I just checked the logbook, and the engine has 1,325.4 hours on it. So what is the overall condition of the engine? Mechanically, the engine is fine. The only issue it has right now, which is a pretty minor one, is that one of the valve seals leaks. And after you run the engine and get oil up in the top of the head, and then shut down, that valve seal, when it cools off, leaks, and a little bit of oil leaks through into one of the cylinders. And that means that when we start the engine up, it smokes a little bit as that oil is burned off. It generally takes only 2 or 3 minutes, and that oil is burned off. And once the oil is burned off and everything warms up, the valve seal either doesn't leak or leaks so little that you don't see any smoke in the exhaust. And over the course of a typical summer, we do not burn a measurable amount of oil. You can't tell that any oil has been burned by looking at the dipstick for the engine. Okay, so what has been done with the propulsion system over the years? The biggest thing that was done was back in 2014. I pulled the engine out of the boat, pulled the shaft out, removed the stuffing box, removed and replaced the cutlass bearing, and also took the propeller in and had it retrued. Now, Seaquestor's propeller is an 18-inch diameter 3-blade prop with a 13.35-inch pitch. When I took the propeller in, they checked the pitch, and one blade was bent a little bit and about half an inch different than the others in pitch, which was causing some vibration. So getting the prop retrued really fixed that up, and it also adjusted the overall performance so that the prop was right for the engine. It had just been approximately right before. So anyway, that's one thing. And while the engine was out of the boat, I replaced all of the rubber on the engine. There are a lot of hoses on that engine, little bitty ones, and some of them are really hard to get at with the engine in the boat. So took that opportunity to replace all the rubber, and also took the fuel injectors out, took them into an injector shop in Bangor and had them serviced. And they came back basically in new condition, and reinstalled them. And since then, the engine has been running a lot more smoothly than it did prior to that. Now, there have been, over the years, remember this is our 30th season with the boat, a few other engine issues that have cropped up. The first major engine issue that cropped up was we were out for a couple-day cruise, and the flange that the exhaust attaches to at the back of the exhaust manifold sheared off. It's an aluminum exhaust manifold that's cooled by antifreeze that was part of the marinization of the engine. And over the years, I guess it was loaded at an odd angle or something, and it just sheared off, which meant that we were dumping exhaust right into the back of the boat, and there was no way to get the water out of the exhaust system because there was no exhaust pressure. So I jury-rigged it, and we sailed back, except for the last few hundred yards, which we motored the boat in, and I put a new exhaust manifold on the engine. The other major repair that happened was the starter went on the fritz, and actually it was mostly the starter solenoid which causes the starter to engage with the flywheel on the engine. And the solenoid basically lost part of its throw, and it threw the gear on the starter in only part way to engage with the ring gear. And when we started the engine, it chewed up several teeth on the ring gear. So we pulled the engine out for that and replaced the ring gear and bought a new starter. And since then, we haven't had any major problems. The freshwater pump, which circulates the antifreeze, failed a few years ago, and I replaced it. And that should last, I hope, for another 20 years or so. And I've had to buy a brand new part because although those pumps are rebuildable, there's no benefit to rebuild them from a cost basis. You'd save about $30 or $40, and it's a lot of labor. I've also rebuilt the raw water pump twice. Most recently back in the second half of June. And but that's a normal wear item. The bearings and seals tend to go in those pumps. And that's, is there anything else? Not really. Those are all the major things that have happened. I did, just a couple weeks ago, replace the preheat solenoid, which is part of the starting system that engages, turns on the preheater glow plugs, and the engine won't start without that. So that was a bit of a pain, but it's in there now, brand new one. And the old one lasted 38 years, so hopefully this one will last another 38 years. Probably not as much because it's a new part as opposed to the original part from 1987. So that's the main stuff that's been done to the engine. As I mentioned, I did remove the stuffing box, and we had the propeller shaft trued and put a brand new stuffing box in, which was packed with the dripless packing. So, and it's still fine. And put the engine back in, got it all trued up again and everything. So that's pretty much it. I've had a few other minor problems with the engine, but nothing big that cost much money to repair. So that's what's been up with Seaquestor's engine. And it runs fine. You've heard me start it up, and it starts right up. I mean, when you turn the key on, the alarm for low oil pressure goes off. You press the preheat button, and that disengages that. And after you preheat, you push the start button, and she cranks over for a second, maybe second and a half, and fires up. And that's pretty much every time. Never had a problem getting this engine started. Even after it sits over the winter, it will start right up. So the engine is in pretty good shape for its age, and I think it has lots of hours left in it. Now, the only negative I would say about this engine is that it does take a lot of amps to crank the 2-liter diesel engine over, which indicates that the compression is still just fine. And a single 1,000 amp or cranking amp battery will do it, but it's better to use more than one battery. And we normally start the engine by paralleling the start and house banks so that we have plenty of cranking amps, and that just fires it right up. But it does take a lot of amps to crank it over. And so you don't want to let your batteries run down. Okay, anything else I can think of? Oh, back in 2014, we also, I took the heat exchanger off and rodded it out and cleaned it. Ran a caustic solution through it, and replaced all the seals on it, and everything was fine and dandy. And we replace all the engine zincs every year, and basically the engine is running fine. That is Seaquestor's auxiliary propulsion system. Next video, we'll look at a different system. It's September 1st, 2025, a little after 2 in the afternoon. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I'm back aboard my Allied Princess 36 Catch Seaquestor. And this is going to be the first video in a series of videos about the systems on the boat. And today we're going to talk about one of the more important systems, and that is the propulsion system, or if you will, auxiliary propulsion system. In other words, the engine. So let's get going.